Hello and welcome to the channel. In this video I'm going to talk about photographing primarily bees, but some of this also applies to butterflies. I'm at Woodlake Nature Center in Richfield, Minnesota today, and one of the questions I get in the classes that I teach on this is what is the best lens to use? And there's really a couple options. One option is a macro lens. This is the 105 millimeter macro lens from Nikon. It's actually the older F mount with an adapter on the Nikon Z7 II. And then the other choice is the 70-200, which I have mounted on my Z9, and this is the Z mount lens. So why use one over the other? Well, the macro lens allows us to get closer, have the subject a little bit larger in the frame, but it does have some disadvantages in that the continuous autofocus with the macro lens isn't quite as fast as what you get with some of the other lenses, and so that can be a little bit of an issue with it just being able to keep up with the movement. These things do move relatively quickly, and then if there's any kind of breeze, obviously the flower is moving as well. But the advantage is a really shallow depth of field, because you are really close, that you're going to get some really nice bokeh going on behind the subject. That being said, one of the things that I have noticed, and a lot of other people have made the same kind of comment, is your success rate is pretty low photographing bees with the macro lens. And so this is why typically I prefer the 70-200. It allows me to be back a little bit further. I don't get quite a shallow depth of field, so I've got a little bit of additional space to work with, although sometimes I get too much detail in the background and that can ruin the shot. So I might have a sharp subject, but the background isn't very good. And obviously there's ways to correct that nowadays in post, but I'd rather not do that if I don't have to. The other disadvantage to the 70-200 is you're going to be cropping in quite a bit more than you are with the macro lens. And depending upon what you're planning on doing, that could be an issue. Now, with what most people do with photos, it's really not much of an issue, because the resolution you need for posting online, even for using something in a digital photo frame or using it as wallpaper on your computer, that the resolution is actually pretty small compared to what cameras today are able to capture. And so that works out typically pretty well. So let's look at a couple of examples. So here I have a few shots taken with the macro lens, and you can see I've got some really nice detail. It does fade off pretty quick, but subject's nice and large in the frame. You still do end up having a crop, because bees are pretty small after all, but I'm able to have a lot more in the frame, but have that background be nicely blurred. So that works out pretty well. But if you notice some of these photos, you do get quite a few misses here. And here's a really good example where it just wasn't able to kind of keep up and track. Even though the one right before this was sharp, this one is pretty soft. Now, if we look at the 70-200, if we look at this shot, we see the subject is pretty small in the frame. So I'm going to have to crop in quite a bit in order to get the composition that I'm really looking for. But notice I got a lot more detail now with this particular bee as it's working around this flower, and a little bit better detail in the flower itself. So I do rather like this, but the issue is that I do have a little bit of a problem in terms of how much I do have to crop. So that can be a bit of an issue. The reason I was looking down all of a sudden is I had a visitor. So this snake decided to come and listen to me, I guess, but it was crawling around the area right by my feet. So I was keeping a little bit of an eye on it, even though it is pretty harmless, just a garter snake, but still it is a little bit unnerving when it's right at your feet like that. The other thing that you could sometimes run into is you may have a type of insect that you're maybe not overly confident with getting too close to. It might be a wasp, or maybe you just have a fear of bees. The distance with the 70-200 also helps quite a bit when it comes to that. So what about trying to actually get these shots, and how do we go about doing that? What's the best way? And really it comes down to being patient and waiting for the bee to come to you. And that may sound kind of crazy, but they will actually, the longer you're there, they'll start to ignore you more. And if you try to chase a bee, so you see a bee and you're trying to move the camera with it from flower to flower, you'll never catch up to it. But if you let the bee come back to the flower that you're focused on, your success rate is going to be much greater. So how do you know which one to pick, which flower to pick? If you sit there and watch, you'll notice that there are certain ones that maybe they've got a little bit more pollen. I'm not sure what it is, but there'll be certain ones that the bees will go to more often. So just pick that one, get your focus set up. It'll actually make things a little bit easier on the camera to be able to lock in on that focus, and you'll be able to get those shots. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting is to try to catch bees in flight. Now, this can be really tough because they tend to really want to go off in any direction. There's really no predictability about bees. And so if you want to get bees in flight, what I found your best chance is to actually just fire away on them when they are on a flower and just continue to shoot and have a little bit smaller aperture. So you have a chance when they fly away of actually getting some of those in-flight shots. And here's a couple examples of ones that I got as we were shooting today. And in this one, notice that when you look at it without cropping in, it actually looks pretty good. But when you crop in, you can see it is a little blurred. Maybe that's okay, depending upon what you want to do. Pixel peeping can sometimes cause more problems than it's worth because no one other than you is going to see them that close. But I also have this one here where the bee is much sharper as it's flying away. So it does work, but it is rather challenging, rather difficult, and you will have a very low success rate no matter how much you try this. So it does take a little bit of persistence in addition to patience to get those. One last thing to mention is camera settings. Insects do move pretty quickly, especially bees, and one of the things that I find is having a shutter speed of at least 1/1000th of a second. I think all the shots I took today were 1/2000th of a second or faster, and having an aperture, usually I try to be somewhere between f8 and f11. What that means is ISO is going to be up in that 640 to 1000, maybe even a little bit higher if it's a very cloudy day. So here is a slideshow of some of my favorite images from being out at the Nature Center. I hope you enjoy. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a like. If you want to be notified when I put out more videos, I try to put one out once a week. Don't always quite hit that goal. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and that little bell symbol. So thanks for watching. Bye.